Low, we go high. No. They go low, we kick them. That's what this new Democratic Party is about.
Well, you heard it right. Former Obama Attorney General Eric Holder trying to fire up Democrats. Let's go to our A-team. James Freeman, assistant editor of the Wall Street Journal editorial page and the co-author of Borrowed Time. Kayleigh McEnany, spokeswoman for the Republican National Committee, the RNC, and Jessica Tarlov, a Fox News contributor. Thanks to all of you for being here. First off, Kayleigh, how's that going over?
Not going over well. I mean, you had our chairwoman on earlier who said she challenges any Democrat to come out and say we reject this kind of talk. But we're not hearing that. We're hearing doubling down from Hillary Clinton saying that you should be uncivil toward Republicans. And one of the most overlooked sound bites was not the initial Maxine Waters one where she said to push against Trump officials, but her second one where she said literally verbatim, I threaten Trump supporters all of the time. In a context where Steve Scalise was shot, where there was literally a switchblade attack against a Republican candidate, where you have Rand Paul's ribs broken. In that kind of context, Democrats are acting entirely irresponsible in what they're doing.
Let's have a Democrat respond to that. Jessica?
I don't think he should have said it, but there is also more to his quote. He went on to say, when I say we kick them, I don't mean we do anything inappropriate. We don't do anything illegal, but we have to be tough and we have to fight. And what Eric Holder is talking about is the fact that Republicans never give up. If Brett Kavanaugh had been our nominee for the Supreme Court, Democrats would have run for him when Dr. Ford came forward. Republicans doubled down. Republicans, what they did with Merrick Garland, Democrats wouldn't have done that. Even look what we did with Al Franken, right? Pushed him out right away. That's what Eric Holder's talking about. Michelle Obama has come out this morning and actually gone against what Eric Holder said. And I think the fact actually that Republicans are focusing on this and talking about the mob-like left, et cetera, means that they just want to change the focus away from what's going on here. They are down 30 points with millennials by a ratio of 2 to 1. Americans think that the GOP tax cuts favor corporate America. They're not winning on health care, and so they need to demonize us and make it out like we're going to go and we're going to be kicking Republicans. No one is kicking a Republican, so they don't have to talk about the issues.
But, James, when you pair it with what Hillary Clinton said, I want to play this for you and then get your reaction on the other side. Listen.
You cannot be civil with a political party that wants to destroy what you stand for, what you care about. That's why I believe if we are fortunate enough to win back the House and/or the Senate, that's when civility can start again.
That's why you have political parties, so you can argue about what the best policies are. There are a lot of conservatives and Republicans who didn't like, what got enacted during 8 years of the Obama administration.
Yeah, I think Mrs. Clinton obviously about to kick off the next leg of her global grievance tour. Bill Clinton coming along. They're selling tickets now. There may be an effort there to kind of fire up the crowd, but it is irresponsible language. It's disappointing, but to your point, I think it's also radical policy as well. You mentioned health care. As the president pointed out this week, most Democrats in the House have endorsed a plan to tear up every health care plan in the United States and replace it with a government-run system. So yes, the language is radical. The policies, I think, similar to 2016, are not going to be acceptable despite what flaws people see on the Republican side.
The president has responded to this rhetoric, Kayleigh, and he said, be careful with this rhetoric because it's very dangerous, and specifically referencing what Eric Holder said. What did he mean by that?
Well, he's meaning that in the context of what we're seeing. I listed all of those attacks we're seeing against Republicans. You're seeing protesters banging on the doors of the Supreme Court, accosting people in elevators and airports. And in that context, the president says, this is dangerous to say, and he's right. And I just want to quickly challenge something Jessica said. You said that the left would have run from Justice Kavanaugh. Not true. The left never ran from Bill Clinton. The left is not running from Keith Ellison, who has viable domestic abuse charges against him. The left embraces that kind of behavior and then makes false accusations against Justice Kavanaugh. But it's fine. If you want to continue to call for violence on the left, it's fueling our candidates. We're seeing McSally up by 6, Cruz up by 11, a new poll out today, Kevin Cramer in North Dakota up by 12. So the left's violence calls are fueling the
there before we move on.
Right now, currently in the latest polling, we saw the Democrats are up about 13 in the generic ballot. Yes, Republicans may win seats in the Senate that Republicans should win. I don't know if we're going to win the House. I am hopeful of that. But for you to say that, and I've said the Keith Ellison thing is problematic, but his ex-girlfriend has also not turned over the tapes, right? She says that she has the attack on tape. She hasn't turned it over. And I am no fan of Keith Ellison's, and we've talked about this many, many times. For you to say that we are a party of violence, and I feel terrible about what happened to Steve Scalise. It's unclear if Rand Paul, I know now he's saying that the guy was yelling like, you're taking my health care or something, but that wasn't his original story there. I don't like mob-like tactics at all, but I also don't like when President Trump leads chants of lock her up. I don't like when Ted Nugent calls for, for Obama to hang from a noose and then gets invited to the White House. There are people on both sides of the aisle, and I'm not talking about Eric Holder or Hillary Clinton, who use incredibly inappropriate rhetoric that is dangerous. But that is not what my party is about, and I really resent.
It happens on a daily basis.
On that, I want to bring in, and James, we'll get you to respond to this first. Melania Trump granted this one-on-one interview. She sat down with ABC. It aired this morning, and there was this exchange on bullying and her Be Best campaign. Listen to this.
What happened to you personally, or what did you see personally that you thought you wanted to tackle this issue?
I could say I'm the most bullied person on the world.
You think you're the most bullied person in the world?
One of them, if you really see what people are saying about me. That's why my Be Best initiative is focusing on social media and online behavior. We need to educate the children of social emotional behavior, so when they grow up and they know how to deal with those issues.
James?
Yeah, I think you can expect from her opponents, there's going to be a lot of Twitter commentary pointing out life has worked out pretty well for her. What is she talking about? But I think she has a good point. If you look at the intensity of the criticism on the part of the media in terms of basically everything she wears when she goes on a trip is immediately attacked as being inappropriate in some way. This past week, the New York Times criticized her hat as being a symbol of colonial rule. This is the same hat, by the way, that they used to think was a wonderful fashion item until it was worn by Melania Trump.
Oh, listen, I think she looked amazing on that trip, and I do think she should, she looks like she's out of vogue, and I always stand by that. Michelle Obama certainly had some terrible things said about her. We all do remember how offensive it was that she exposed her arms. Melania Trump sounds so out of touch. I'm the most bullied person in the world. I'd say, Matthew Shepard was probably the most bullied person in the world. People are dying every day because of bullying. They suffer from depression and anxiety. They can't go to their classrooms. They can't go to work. I support the cause. Her husband is a terrible bully, and she should deal with that. But she sounds as out of touch, I would say, as Hillary Clinton.
But she's on the receiving end of an awful lot of, hateful commentary.
So is anyone in public life. Chelsea Clinton, what happened to her growing up?
You cannot compare, Michelle Obama, who was on so many magazine covers, to what Melania has gone through. People have literally made up stories about her immigration status, her marriage. When she had surgery, they came up with all kinds of conspiracy theories as to where she was. They've accused her of having a stunt double. They've gone after her child in relentless ways. None of us on this panel know what that is like, that kind of scrutiny. And meanwhile, I've had private conversations with Melania. I've had the pleasure of hearing her passion for helping children across this country. And she's doing a stellar job on the world stage. Her popularity is soaring and approval ratings. So, the media can attack her, but you can't stop her from doing all
She is my preferred Trump, I would say.
Before we move on, do we have time to play this last sound from that Melania Trump interview? Because it is fascinating. Let's see if we can listen real quick.
He's been in office now almost 2 years. Has he had people that you didn't trust working for him?
Yes.
Did you let him know?
I let him know.
And what did he do?
Well, some people, they don't work there anymore, and it's very difficult sometimes because I'm so busy with my office. I don't get involved with West Wing.
Do you think there's still people there that he can't trust?
Yes.
What do you think of that?
People he can't trust in the West Wing.
Yeah, certainly we saw that anonymous op-ed that was penned. So there are people that cannot be trusted. And I'm so grateful that he has Jared there and Ivanka and Melania and very smart individuals around him that are loyal and that he can trust, because I think it's unfortunate.
We don't know that op-ed came from the West Wing. Of course, it could be one of 8,000 people in the federal government who are senior officials.
It could have been the New York Times. He said, I don't think so.
It's not.
Thousands of people are senior executives in the federal government. But I think you're seeing from her what you see in the president's comments and Twitter feed. I think that was an honest answer. And sometimes maybe the press will reflect on how transparent, refreshingly transparent, sometimes alarmingly transparent this White House is. But I think that was an honest response.
I'm glad we got it all in there. Thank you very much to our A-team.
Thank you.
Good to have all three of you.
Now, this Fox News alert, the Panhandle, devastated by the wrath of Hurricane Michael. Homes, trees ripped apart. Still, many people decided to ride out the storm, including former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. He joins us live from Florida with his story. Plus,
why did Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein cancel his meeting on Capitol Hill? We're going to have more reaction on this from lawmakers and the president.
Certain things to me that, are very positive about that event, and I would imagine that you'd want to put that down. And frankly, whether you were under oath or not shouldn't matter.
Right.
But he mentioned things to me that I would think would be fine for him to testify.
the terrible trail of devastation for hundreds of miles, tearing lives and homes apart. Many still recovering from a hurricane only weeks ago. Crews are clearing roads and doing search and rescue right now. Now the storm is moving from Georgia into South Carolina.
Hurricane Michael went through and caused massive amounts of devastation along the Florida Panhandle, as well as moved through southwest Georgia last night and continues to push its way through South Carolina and North Carolina as we speak. So the event is still ongoing. For citizens in North Carolina and South Carolina, please make sure you're listening to all the local warnings that are pushing forward.
Meanwhile, a path of catastrophic destruction in Mexico Beach, a small tourist town just down the coast from Panama City, where Hurricane Michael made landfall. And as you can see, the damage there is just absolutely horrific. Rescuers are having trouble even getting in. One resident capturing the storm on video, describing a sea of debris floating in the floodwaters there. She said visibly reduced dramatically dramatically reduced the ability to see. She said you could barely see anything, and that from her vantage point, all of the nearby houses were submerged at one point. Joining us now by phone,
former Arkansas governor and Fox News contributor Mike Huckabee. He's an eyewitness to all of this. He rode out the storm in Santa Rosa Beach, Florida. So it sounds, Governor, like the eye passed a little bit to the east of you. It must have been pretty scary.
Well, John, we were very fortunate, if you want to call it that. But if you're on the left side of a hurricane, which for me is the only time I ever want to be on the left side of anything. But in this case, that's where we were. And that means that most of our wind actually came from the north as the hurricane was coming back around in its counterclockwise rotation. But we had relatively little damage compared to what's happened east of us, where it's just mass devastation. From Panama City Beach, which is about 20 miles east of us, on eastward from there all the way to Apalachicola and beyond, devastating losses and destruction. And so it was scary in a lot of ways. You know, it's one of those things you don't really want to go through again. But I will say that there was extraordinary coordination. Governor Rick Scott did a magnificent job in staging assets in advance of the storm. The preparations for it, even though there weren't the level of warnings, it wasn't like we had several days. This thing kind of popped up on Saturday, Sunday, and then it got much worse, escalating to a Cat 4 during the night before it actually hit. So there was, fortunately, a lot of preparation done in advance. This would have been a much worse storm in terms of loss of life had there not been the level of leadership on the part of Governor Scott, FEMA, and local emergency management officials.
Well, some of these pictures, Governor Huckabee, that we're seeing now coming in from Mexico Beach, just complete destruction there. We just spoke to the Cajun Navy, the head of the Cajun Navy, who said they haven't even been able to get in there yet. But you rode this out in your home in Santa Rosa Beach, and some of your neighbors who couldn't ride it out in their homes, you welcomed them in yours.
We did have neighbors who sheltered with us because our home is relatively new. It's built to exceed the latest hurricane codes. It's not, something that you're so foolish about to say, well, it's indestructible. The people on the Titanic thought that. But as much as it is humanly possible to engineer a structure that is designed specifically to to withstand, a hurricane. I think, that's what, when we built this house, is what we did. It managed fine. There were a lot of features in the house, hurricane screens and so on. It reminds us of why we spent that money to build it this way, and certainly makes me glad we did.
Well, you've got water very close by. As you look around today, what kind of damage are you seeing?
The water damage was relatively small. We had a very angry Gulf of Mexico yesterday that was providing for us waves 20, 29 feet high, and something we've never seen before. But again, because of the fact that most of our wind, the most heavy part of it blew from the north, when the waves would have been at their worst, the wind was pushing them back. And so it gave us a little relief. Now, further to the east, where it was coming ashore directly, that's where you see this extraordinary devastation like they experienced at Mexico Beach, as well as in many parts of Panama City Beach, where that was a direct force wind of up to 150 miles an hour, 155, just short of a Cat 5. And there's just not much that anybody can do when the winds are that heavy. And those are tornado-level winds by far, but they're sustained winds over several hours. So it's not just like it comes through, blows, and gone. It comes in, it stays, and that wind is on the ground for quite some time. And that's why, these hurricane events can be so incredibly devastating to property.
Governor Huckabee, so glad to hear you're doing okay, and those around you, your neighbors, you were able to help out. We spoke to Senator Marco Rubio at the top of the show of Florida, and he was talking about the need for housing. There are so many that are just plain left without their homes, and it is a situation perhaps that no one could have predicted. What is that going to be like? Obviously, rescue efforts are ongoing at this moment, and rebuilding is another thing, but some completely left without homes.
Long-term, Senator, that's going to be one of the great challenges because this is a tourist area, as you well know, and that means you have an enormous number of people in the service industry. Affordable housing for people who work in the tourist industry is already a challenge. When you add to that the destruction of a lot of homes and a lot of housing, apartments, trailer parks, et cetera, where people have been living, the ones most susceptible to being destroyed, the time it takes just to rebuild is extraordinary. So there's going to be a huge economic impact over a long period of time, I would say for 18 months or so, as not only is just a matter of cleaning up the debris. That's not that difficult. I mean, you know what's on the ground, you get it up, you get it out of there. Mm-hmm. But rebuilding, that's something altogether different, and it will be a real challenge to find affordable and immediate housing that will take care of the people who live here year-round, as well as the ones who serve the tourist industry, and then getting those condominiums, the hotels, the restaurants back up to operation. At least it's during the winter, it's the off-season, but there's still going to be enormous challenges. I will say there's going to be a great level of construction industry activity that will be going on for the next many months.
We pray for all those involved and all those affected by this massive storm. Governor Mike Huckabee, glad you're all right. Thanks for the phone call in.
Great to talk to you guys. Take care.
Thanks, Governor. Many Republican lawmakers are furious after Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein cancels his meeting on Capitol Hill. He was supposed to discuss a report that claims he wanted to secretly record the president. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes on Hannity last night.
Clearly, what this is the investigators who have no one watching them, no one to investigate them, and they're running amok. Running amok so much that they won't even come and testify to Congress. It's pretty pathetic.
Our chief intelligence correspondent, Catherine Herridge, is in Washington with more details. Catherine.
Thank you, John, and good morning. A short time ago, the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, confirming to Fox News that the deputy attorney general told the president his comments about secretly recording the president after he fired FBI Director James Comey last year were sarcastic. Giuliani also said the president did not believe the deputy attorney general considered invoking the 25th Amendment to remove him from office. Giuliani noted that the president sees Rosenstein on a more regular basis than Attorney General Jeff Sessions. On Monday this week, Rosenstein was there for the White House swearing in of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. But this morning, the president phoned into Fox and Friends and questioned why Rosenstein did not go to the Hill to tell his side of the story.
I was surprised at that. I would think he would. He mentioned certain things to me that, are very positive about that event, and I would imagine that you'd want to put that down. And frankly, whether you were under oath or not shouldn't matter.
Right.
But he mentioned things to me that I would think would be fine for him to testify. And so, when Congress calls. So I'm a little surprised that Rod wouldn't do it.
On Tuesday, Fox News first reported that the FBI's top lawyer, James A. Baker, who worked under Director Comey, told Congress that he believed Rosenstein's wire comments were serious, and that testimony is another witness that's at odds with the Deputy Attorney General's account. The session today, there was really an impasse with some lawmakers pushing for a transcribed interview under oath because the allegations against Rosenstein are so serious versus a briefing or more informal meeting, which of course would have no paper trail, John.
A lot to come on that story. Catherine Herridge, our chief intelligence correspondent, thank you.
We are following the wild ride in the U.S. stock market today after that big plunge yesterday. Stocks down again today, 100-point loss an hour into trading. David Asman will be here to break this all down for us on where markets go next.